A fresh to the hobby find, and you will not believe the T206 cards in this collection. Hey, it's Mike. Thanks for tuning back in. Today is Friday, which means it is Attic Find Friday, the best day of the week, and I have quite a story for you. Hopefully you get today off. You know, some people do, some people don't, and you get some time, spend some time with family. I'm not a Black Friday shopper. I've never, ever ventured out on Black Friday. I am going to go out and get some food for the family, so wish me luck. This is the Ramsburg Collection, and you've probably never heard of it unless you follow Joe Orlando on Twitter, which is, he started tweeting about this, teasing it, October 17th. And now, more than a month later, he tells the full story. And somebody recently asked, you know, all of these Attic Find Fridays have been brand new stories, fresh to the hobby. They weren't even in auctions yet. And somebody asked me, do I get sponsored to do this? And no, I do not. Why would they sponsor me when I do it for free? And I'm going to talk a little bit more about my lack of sponsorships by choice at the end of the year in a year-end retrospective, and why I've largely moved away from sponsorships in about a month from now. So make sure you stick around. So the Ramsburg Collection, Joe Orlando teased this a few times over the last couple of weeks of October and the first couple of weeks of November. And then he, just this week, I think, wrote an article telling the whole story. And it's one of the maybe 5 best Attic Find Friday stories I've covered, I'm guessing. And there have been, you know, I've covered all the greatest finds of all time. So this is a pretty special one, I think. So he wrote that Susan Sherman connected with him on LinkedIn, of all places, earlier this year, and Susan wrote to him that her mother, Anne, had left a handwritten note with Joe Orlando's name on it, saying that if they needed any advice on the card collection that she was leaving to Susan and her brothers, they should call Joe Orlando. She had had a conversation with Joe 10 or 12 years ago at a Baltimore National Sports Collectors Convention about this collection that her father, that Susan's grandfather, had left Susan's mother years and years ago. It was a collection of late 19th century, early 20th century trading cards, mostly baseball. Susan's grandfather had clearly had an affinity for baseball. And by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but Joe Orlando, I don't know if he wrote this story or if he has somebody on his team that writes it. It's very well written. It's a nice story, laid out nicely with the photos. But I also grabbed some of the photos off of his Twitter and something else that I found, a couple of other photos that I found via Google. Susan's grandfather was Dick Ramsburg. He was collected as a child in the early 20th century, passed away in 1968, I think. He was also not only a big collector, he was a great athlete. He won 17 tennis titles in his lifetime. He had an annual championship, tennis championship named after him at his club. He was inducted into YMCA's Sports Hall of Fame as a tennis player in 1992. He passed down his collection when he passed away to Susan's mother, Anne. And then Anne passed away decades later, earlier this year, early 2023, and passed it down to her 2 sons and daughter, Susan. It had been part of their family for over a century, well over a century. Interestingly, Anne, again the mother who passed this down to Susan, had considered selling it years and years ago. Her father passed away in the 60s, and then in the 80s her mother passed away, and she inherited everything that was in their house, and she was cleaning out the house and pulled the cards out of the attic and gave it to her sons and said, take this down, put it outside, hopefully somebody will come along and take it. She was just going to give away thousands of trading cards for free to strangers. She was going through a difficult time with her mom having passed away and had a moment of weakness, the article says. But her sons, very smartly, looked through them and found a handwritten note from their grandfather, Anne's father, saying, it was apparently written before Susan was born, saying, the boys might like this someday. And so they showed Anne this note, and she decided she would hang on to it after all. Another handwritten note from her father said that if the boys weren't interested, she should reach out to J.R. Burdick, Jefferson Burdick, the father of sports card collecting. Apparently, the grandfather, Dick Ramsburg, was aware of who Jefferson Burdick was and said that these cards were worth money, and Jefferson Burdick, J.R. Burdick, would be interested. So they survived the Depression, they survived the entire 20th century, and then Susan moved to Florida. They survived many hurricanes, tropical storms, and eventually, in early 2023, Susan's mom, Anne, passes away and passes these cards down to Susan and her two brothers. They discovered that Anne and her husband, Marvin, had organized the collection over the years after inheriting them from her parents. It was in much better organization to it than it had when Susan's brothers had looked through it in the 80s. They talked it over. They weren't card collectors. The three of them were not card collectors, and they kind of wanted to keep it in the family but didn't really know what to do with it, and they decided to just sell it so other collectors could enjoy it, and also probably to get a little money from it too. So what's in the collection? There were more than 3,300 T206 cards, which can complete more than 6 complete basic T206 sets. There were more than 500 Hall of Famers. In this photo, you've got 3 Cy Young throwing T206s, 3 Cy Young portraits, 3 Christy Mathewsons, 2 Walter Johnsons hand at chest, 1 Walter Johnson portrait. I've got this other photo here that I grabbed from Joe Orlando's Twitter. It's all Ty Cobbs. It's 10 Ty Cobb red portraits. And I looked up some of these. So like a PSA 5 goes for about $15,000. One of them is a Tolstoy back, which he tweeted out in a different tweet. Tolstoy back, last one sold publicly, was a PSA 3, or last PSA one that sold publicly, was a PSA 3, sold for about $8,000 in 2020. There are also 7 Ty Cobb green portraits. PSA 2 sell for between $5,000 and $10,000. There are 7 Cobb bat on shoulders. PSA 4s go for about $10,000. And 7 Cobb bat off shoulders. PSA 4s go for about $10,000. So just between the 31 Ty Cobbs from T206, you have well into 6 figures in all likelihood. And these are, low to mid-grade. These Cobbs look really, really nice. So it'll be really interesting. I'll be following. There are also 18 Walter Johnsons, 18 Christy Mathewsons, 19 Cy Youngs. And the Cy Youngs, similar to the Cobbs, these sell for thousands and thousands of dollars, depending on the condition, of course. And I didn't delve into what these might sell for, but I'm wondering how deep into the 6 figures this entire collection will go. Will it hit millions? It's tough to say until we know what's in there. There are also 500 T205 gold border cards. There are 400 T207 brown background cards. There's an entire 1887 N28 Allen and Ginter set. There were even boxing cards, including Jack Johnson. Non-sports, there were quite a few non-sports cards with an emphasis on military figures. He had quite a few cards from several different military sets from the 19th and early 20th century. There were over 10,000 cards in all. Now, I have more than 10,000 cards, but most of them are junk wax. These are not junk wax. They are heavy on tobacco. And interestingly, Dick Ramsburg never smoked, never used any form of tobacco whatsoever, but he had a lot of tobacco cards. They surmised, based on the collection, that he expanded his collection via through-the-mail trades with other collectors, which is really cool. This was obviously in the first half of the 20th century, where he's trading with people through the mail. Pretty cool. The collection also contained rarities and variations, like the double-name Mordecai Brown, Ray Demmett and Bill O'Hara, variations as well. The collection's currently being sorted and inventoried. They're sending off some cards to get graded. It will appear throughout 2024, I guess, in heritage auctions, different auctions starting in February. So I will be following these. You'll see these more in my Sunday update videos when these start coming to auction and what they sell for. Hopefully we'll see an update showing like a total amount that the collection sold for. I want to know in my comments, how much do you think, without knowing everything, obviously you can't know, will this hit $1 million or more, or will it go for less than $1 million? And then, yeah, we'll do a retrospective. That's the second time I've used this. I've never used that word in my entire lifespan of my channel, and suddenly twice in this video. Strange. Anyway, tomorrow I will be doing my collection retrospective where I talk about the collection I bought and sold in the last couple of months and how much money I made from it. And then Sunday back with clearing the bases. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed.